My name is Russell Mullenberg, and this is Eat This Word, a weekly program where I serve up bite-sized bits of Bible. The bite-sized bit of Bible we're going to be looking at this week it's a wonderful passage. It's Isaiah 55, verses 1 through 3. Here's what it says. It says, "Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest of fare. Give ear and come to me. Listen that you may live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you, my faithful love promised to David." So this is just a wonderfully warm and attractive passage, this picture that God paints of what he offers to us, this idea of water and milk and wine that he has plenty of for us. So this passage is often called the Great Invitation. In my NIV Bible, that's the heading for Isaiah 55. Hero of mine, John Piper, does a 3 or 4 part sermon series on Isaiah 55. He calls it the Great Invitation. So just this idea that God here is inviting us to come to him. So that word invite kind of has 2 senses. You might say you're at the beach and you kind of come around a corner and you find a little cove and it's quiet and it's secluded. You say, oh, this is an inviting spot. Right? It looks nice, it's attractive, it's a place that you can kind of settle down and feel comfortable. So that's one sense of the word inviting. The other sense is I want to invite you to my party. I want to invite you to my wedding. And so this passage, I think, when we call it the Great Invitation, it uses that word in both ways. This is attractive. It's in a warm description of God, and he is inviting us to come to him. So 3 questions I want to ask of this passage. I want to ask, who's invited? Who is God talking to in this passage? That's what we'll talk about this week. Next week, we'll come back to the same passage and we'll say, well, what exactly is God inviting us to? What's on offer here in this passage? And then the third week, if we are invited, then what is it we are to do in response? What is this passage calling us to do? So this week, who is invited? This great invitation. Who's it for? Who is God talking to? And the answer is there are 2 categories of people, 2 types of people. The first type, we'll go back to the passage. It says, "Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, you who have no money." So 2 phrases, but the same category of people. I'll call them this. It's those who are thirsty and broke and know it. So God says, if you're thirsty, come. If you don't have any money, come. If you're thirsty and broke, if you are at the end of your rope, if you're out of resources, if you're desperate, God says, I'm inviting you. This is the deserted island. This is someone who finds themselves on a spiritual deserted island, and they know they have no hope of rescue. There's nothing they can do to get themselves off. They're waiting for the rescue helicopter to come. It's their only hope. Well, this passage is the rescue helicopter. And the exciting thing about this is, and this is consistent throughout the Bible, is God's not waiting for us to get our act together. God's not looking for people who are the brightest or the best or the fastest. He's not looking to the people who, he's not it's not a game of playground pick'em. You know how that goes. One kid gets to be the captain, and right away he picks the tallest kid, and then he picks the strongest kid, and then he picks the fastest kid. And that's not God. God says, if you're thirsty, if you're broke, if you're desperate, and you know it, he's come. This invitation's for you. So that's the first category of people who are thirsty and broke and know it. Now, the second category of people, I'll put it like this. These are people who are thirsty and broke, but they don't know it. Okay, so it says, why are you spending money on what's not bread? So this category of people, they've got money and they're spending, why are you spending your labor on what does not satisfy? These people have strength, and out of their strength, they're working, and these are people who think they can handle it on their own. These are people spiritually who think they can make their own way, carve their own path. And so these folks really feel like they don't really need God. They're not on some spiritual desert island. They're making it out here in the world, and so they feel pretty good on their own, thanks. Except God says, you're spending your money on things that aren't bread. You're laboring for things that don't satisfy. This is the spiritual equivalent of junk food. These folks are pursuing things in this world that ultimately are empty calories. I don't know what spiritual junk food looked like back in that day, but we're plenty familiar with that right now. We know you can drink a can of soda pop full of sugar and you can get a lot of calories that way, but it's not going to do you a lot of good. You can go to a fast food restaurant, you can open a bag of chips. There's a lot of ways to get empty calories that ultimately going to leave you more hungry, going to really leave you malnourished. They're not the solid food that we really need. And this category of people, they're out there doing things on their own, they're working on their own, but they're ultimately the things they're chasing after are going to leave them empty. Think of this category of people as if only people. These are, if only I could get married, I'd be happy. Well, if only I could get divorced, then I'd be happy. If only I could change jobs. If only I could move to a different town. If only my kids would behave better. And these are people for whom the grass is always greener, and then they jump over to the next fence, and then it turns out, well, the lawn over has an even greener lawn. And so they're always looking for that next thing. They're always chasing that next thing that will satisfy. And so these folks believe they're self-sufficient, but God says, look, you're just as broke. You're just as thirsty as the first group of folks. And the great thing here about this passage is that the invitation's for everybody. So if you're thirsty and you're broke and you know it, you're at the end of the rope, and God says, come. And if you're trying to do it on your own and you're trying to make it on your own, but you keep coming up short and you're never satisfied, God says, no, you come too. Because what God has on offer here isn't spiritual junk food. It's the real thing. What he has on offer is something that really does satisfy. He's talking about himself. We'll talk about that next week when we come back to this great invitation.